Welcome to Sensible Health Solutions, the show where we simplify health and wellness. Join your hosts, Hallie Fields and Dr. Scott Luper, as they share practical tips and expert insight to help you navigate common ailments, nutrition, and overall well-being. Tune in for straightforward advice that empowers you to live a healthier life.
Good afternoon, Fairbanks, and welcome back to Health Talk. My name is Hallie Fields, and I'm your host today as we talk about health, how to get it, and how to keep it. With me, of course, is Dr. Scott Luper. Dr. Luper is a naturopathic doctor, and today we're talking about how to get healthy. Hi, Dr. Luper. How are you?
Hi, Haley. I'm doing good.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. We've had a fabulous holiday. We had all kinds of fun, did fun things. It's a birthday season for us, too, so we've had a lot of birthdays. In fact, today is my son Patrick's birthday. He turns 8 today.
It is. Happy birthday, Patrick.
Yeah, he had a lot of fun. He opened presents this morning, and they had just, it was great. He's very appreciative. It's funny. He's got this generosity of spirit, and he's big hugs, and he's happy and appreciative, and just thought it was great. Except for one of the things he got was his Lego thing where he had to make this thing. And then I'd say about 15 minutes into it, he was crying and in tears and couldn't do it.
It was frustrating. He's only 8.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
His mom talked him out of it. I said, well, I'll do it. Thinking, sweet, I get to make it Lego.
Oh, yeah.
Nope. Mom didn't go for that.
My daughter got a castle Lego set for Christmas. And, of course, it has like 300 plus pieces.
Yeah.
We did one last year together, and I did a majority of the work, but she asked Santa for her very own castle Lego set so that she could put it together by herself. So
yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But we are almost done with the holidays. This weekend will be New Year's, and we're heading into 2024.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm thinking 2024 is going to be a good year.
Me too. So, in continuing to talk about health and wellness and how to get it and how to keep it, what should we talk about today?
Let's talk about anemia.
Oh, good one.
It's a common problem. It's an important problem, and it's poorly understood. Most everybody thinks anemia is about iron. If you take iron, then you can treat anemia.
Yeah.
And that's true some of the time, but I wouldn't even say that's true most of the time. Anemia is caused by lots of different things. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. So let's talk about anemia.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the first reason or thing that comes to mind is, of course, iron deficiency in diet or with women, loss of blood through menstruation. So I guess what other ways can somebody become anemic?
Yeah, let's start off with a bigger picture, which is, because, most everybody knows what anemia is, but not everybody. So I want to make sure everybody's up to speed on what the heck we're even talking about.
Let's make it clear. What is anemia?
Okay, so anemia is when your blood can't carry enough oxygen.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to. So how does your blood carry oxygen? It's got this thing called hemoglobin, and inside the hemoglobin is a little atom of iron. And so hemoglobin, in order for it to work, it has to have iron. If it doesn't have the iron, it doesn't work right. So if the hemoglobin is going to break down, it could be the iron part of it. It could also be the hemoglobin part. But anyways, let's keep it simple. The oxygen attaches to the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin carries the oxygen to the various cells of the body. The oxygen jumps off the hemoglobin. It comes back, picks up more oxygen, goes around. It's like a little cart, if you will, that transport oxygen around.
Right.
Now, these carts are gathered together in these big bundles, like millions of these little hemoglobin molecules all in these bundles. These bundles are known as red blood cells. And the body has to make these bundles. They don't last forever. They're good for about 3 months on average. After that, they need to be recycled. What the body does is goes through, strips the iron out of them, builds new little cages around the iron, otherwise known as hemoglobin, packages them all back up into a new cell, sends them on out to do their job, picking up oxygen, shuttling it from one place to the other is what it does. So if there's going to be a breakdown, typically what it is some breakdown either in the hemoglobin either the construction of it or whether it's got enough iron in or whatever. So the hemoglobin, just say it that way. The other thing that can break down is if you don't have enough red blood cells, or the red blood cells do weird things. They're just supposed to kind of sit there like a blob, kind of a round blob. It pinches in the middle to make sure there's a lot of surface area for the oxygen to get in and out. You don't want a blob that's perfectly circular because then you can't hit the center of it. So it's pinched in like a donut. It doesn't actually have a hole in it, but it does this little pinch in thing because it's got the red blood cells has got this skeleton that kind of pulls it together and holds it into shape. And so for everything to work right, you got to have the ability to make these little cells. We can talk more about that. To have them be the right shape, we'll talk more about that. To have them contain enough hemoglobin, we'll talk more about that too. We'll talk about all the different ways it goes bad. But bottom line, something along this whole system has to break down, and you don't make enough of it, and now you got anemia. Now, if you got anemia, how you can tell is you're tired.
Yeah.
You don't have enough oxygen. You know, you're okay if you sit still and do nothing. Usually you're fine. I feel fine as long as I sit here on the couch and do nothing. The minute you get up and go do something like cook or vacuum or work or, heaven forbid, exercise, then you really feel it. And you just don't have enough air. You run out of air and you just get really tired. And people can tell if you have anemia by looking at you because blood is red. And blood is in our skin, so it shows through our skin as pink. People are rosy-cheeked, right?
Sure.
Except for when you're anemic, you don't have enough blood. You don't have enough hemoglobin, which is carrying the color. And so these people come up looking pale.
Oh.
Pale and tired and kind of dull. They have a kind of a dullness to them because in order to do things for your body, like to make stuff and to keep everything healthy, it needs oxygen. So what you're doing is just running low on oxygen. You're running an oxygen deficiency all the time. And so your body has to dial it back. And you don't die, at least not at first.
Yeah.
What you do is you just get lower and slower and lower and slower and lower and slower. And you learn to do with less. That's how it goes. Now, if it happens suddenly, that's when people die because your body's not used to it. But if you normally doesn't go sudden, it goes gradual. You don't get anemia anemic in a day. It takes a while.
Does it?
It does. It takes a while because you're unless somebody stabs you.
Sure.
Then you become anemic in a minute.
Blood loss. Yeah. Right. That would make sense.
Or you get in a car wreck or you chop off your hand accidentally, stuff like that. Yeah, that's what you get insto anemia doing that way. But that's not the kind of anemia we're talking about or we think about. That's emergency room stuff. We're talking about people coming in tired and blah.
Could it be contributed to like genetic factors as well?
It can. In fact. I don't know, maybe we should start talking about the weird stuff and talk about genetics first.
I like weird stuff.
No. You know what we should do? Let's go for the common stuff first.
Okay, and then we'll get weird.
We're gonna what's the word? Benefit the people who've tuned into the station early, our show, and they'll get the juicy stuff. The later comers, well, they'll get the dregs.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's talk about number one cause. I said it's not as common as people think, but it is the number one cause, and that is an iron deficiency. In order to make hemoglobin, you got to have some iron in the middle of it. Otherwise, even if you did make it, it wouldn't do anything. It's not worth doing anything, so the body doesn't even bother to do it. So you got to have enough iron to actually make hemoglobin. So the thing is, iron, you can absorb it in your diet. It's normally in food. Some kind of foods are naturally high in iron. Spinach has got a reputation for being high in iron. But you know what's really high in iron? Blood.
Oh.
Blood.
Yeah. So red meat.
Yeah, red meat.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's where the iron's really coming from.
So a lot of like vegetarians or vegans might have a deficiency.
Could be. They tend to eat a lot of, leafy greens, which are naturally have
legumes.
more iron. Yeah, they have more iron, but they're not necessarily high in iron. What's high in iron is red blood because the iron's right there in the blood, in the hemoglobin that we got from the cow or the pig or whatever, right? They got the red blood right there. So if you eat a fair amount of meat, red meat particularly, you're going to get plenty of iron from that usually, except for it doesn't always work because in order to absorb iron, you got to make it sticky. Iron is small. These are little microscopic specks, and it's hard for the body to suck them up regularly. It doesn't necessarily, you can't get a hold of them. They're too small. We don't have a hand that small to be able to grab them and pull them in. So there's got to be some way to make them sticky so they'll stick to stuff. And there's a straightforward way to make it sticky. What you do is you run that iron through an acid bath. And the acid bath pulls off electrons and makes it sticky. Except for, who's got an acid bath, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not.
Wait, I can't eat dinner
listeners.
until I run my food through an acid bath. Wait. We all have acid baths. It's inside our body.
Yeah.
All we have to do is bite stuff, chew it up, and swallow it. And it goes through an acid bath. Isn't that fabulous? What a great system. Except for, lots of people have their acid baths shut off. They take acid blockers, and they don't have any acid now.
Okay, that
And so
could
they
be
can't absorb
problematic.
iron or calcium or magnesium very well or a bunch of stuff. It turns out that acid bath was actually doing something. It wasn't a mistake that it was there. It was designed in. The way our bodies are designed was designed to have an acid bath in our stomach. It cleans our food. It helps with digestion. It helps with mineral absorption.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, we don't absorb. So I have this nice lady who came to see me, several in fact, but I'm thinking of one in particular, who came to see me, and I looked at her labs and I said, hey, you're anemic. She says, yeah, I'm always anemic. I've been anemic since I was a kid. I take iron. I do all kinds of stuff. It doesn't work. There's no way I can treat this thing. And I said, Dim's fighting words. You're going to treat it. And so what I ended up doing is I put her on acid. I actually took hydrochloric acid mixed with betaine, which makes it to where it doesn't burn. And it's put into a capsule. It's called betaine hydrochloride. And I had her start taking betaine hydrochloride with her iron. Whenever she took iron, she took betaine hydrochloride. Absolutely cured her. Her anemia went away. First time in her life since she was a kid that she didn't have anemia because she needed the acid. Now, why did she make enough acid? I don't know. Some people don't. There's variations. Some people do stuff really well and some people do it poorly. She happened to be weak in the acid production category. So, but we can fix it. That's the thing where we can actually supplement. So we can cure that by having people take hydrochloric acid. That's interesting, isn't it?
Very, yeah. I didn't know that the acid made it sticky like that.
Yeah. Other thing is iron in the olden days used to all be iron sulfate, which is constipating, which most people who took iron, they would complain. They say, oh, I take iron, it just stops me up. And it always frustrated me because anybody who would take a minute to look into iron would realize iron sulfate is a horrible place to get it. It's much better to get iron citrate or iron with an amino acid attached to it because now it's easier to get a hold of. Remember, it's hard to get these specks. They're too small. You can't grab them. But if you have the iron attached to something, it's easier to pull it in. And so you could take lots of other different kinds of iron. Iron picolinate is another one you can do. There's a bunch of them. And their absorption's much better on them. They work better. It's just a better thing all the way around. Now, the good news is, finally, in the last 2-3 years, the docs around are now starting to use these other irons. Yay! I'm so glad.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's nice that people, when they come into iron, they're actually taking the right kind of iron now. So word's out.
Yeah. It's 2024.
And if it turns out you're somebody who's taking iron sulfate, I'm so sorry. You need to quit and go find a better iron. Go talk to your doctor about it, though. But go find a better iron that doesn't cause constipation. And you can get the iron levels to come up. Okay? Now, there's other things. We talk about the iron. We can say more about that, but let's talk about some of the other kinds of anemia.
I'm interested in what other kinds of anemia.
Well, you and I were talking earlier about B12 anemia.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research, and to my surprise, there's 6 different types of anemia. One is the lack of B12 or folic acid.
They do the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about iron anemia is when you, on a blood test, you look at the average size of the red blood cells, they're always small. The average size of a red blood cell is 90, but if you got an iron anemia, then it shows up usually in the 70s. Could be as low as the 60s. And you think, well, why are the red blood cells always small? But if you think about it for a second, from what I've already told you, you could already figure it out. It's because those red blood cells don't have enough hemoglobin in them.
Sure.
And if they don't have enough hemoglobin, they come up. They come up tiny.
Yeah.
The little, or tiny and flat.
Okay.
If you look at red blood cells under the microscope, instead of being puffy, they go flat. And remember I told you there's the membrane pinches in the middle, and the membrane actually touches because there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And when it touches, it makes this weird pattern when you look under the microscope. It makes it look like a target. You know, like an old-fashioned dartboard?
Yeah.
Circle, circle, circle. You get that circle thing. And so they're called target cells, and it's a sign of anemia. It's a sign of a specific kind of lack of hemoglobin anemia. Most of the time it's being caused by lack of iron. But the interesting thing about the B12 anemia is exactly the opposite.
Right. That's what I was seeing, is that the red blood cells are larger.
Yeah, they're big. So instead of being 90, which is the normal size, they're 100, 105. Now, there's a certain limit where the red blood cells can't get any bigger because the capillaries are small, and if they're too big, they can't get through.
Does that cause clotting? Or
no, it just the body just won't make them bigger than that.
Okay.
There's a certain limit. The body's not stupid. It's got some kind of way to know how big they are. Now, the problem with the B12 deficiency is, and you think, wait, I'm making bigger red blood cells? That's the opposite of anemia. I'd have bigger cells carrying more hemoglobin. Now, the breakdown is that you need B12 and folate to make new cells, to make the DNA, to go ahead and take the chromosomes and to double them so that you can make a new cell. Requires B12 and folate. Now, if you don't have enough B12 and folate, then the body can't make new cells. So since it can't make new cells, or at least not enough, what few it can make makes them big. Now they're beefy. We're trying to compensate. So I can't make as many, but I'll make the other ones bigger. Now it's going to come out okay, right? Even though they're bigger now, they're carrying more hemoglobin. And it does help a little, but not enough. And you'll still come up anemic. Even though your cells are bigger, there's so few of them that you literally don't have enough hemoglobin to do the job to pick up oxygen and carry it around your body. Now, the next question is going to be, well, how can you get a B12 deficiency? And the answer is not easily. B12 is hard to go short of. Now, if you're vegetarian, it's not hard to go short of because B12 is in animal products.
Okay.
So if you're eating animal products, they're not necessarily red meat, but you could eat eggs and dairy and, I don't know, I guess whatever, the animal products.
Sure.
Meat for sure. And then you get your B12 that way. So vegetarians have a hard time doing this. So they have to either do mushrooms, which have some B12 in them, or better yet, just take B12. It's easy. You just take a B12. You go to the grocery store, you get B12 in a bottle, and you put it in your mouth. The ones I like are the ones that taste like cherry. God, those are killer.
Yeah, those chewable B12
really
tablets.
They're candy. They're a B12. I'm eating candy for my health.
Can you eat too much?
Yes, except for I've never seen it. Never seen it. Never. Not in 30 years of practice. Never seen it. Never seen anybody overdose on B12.
Okay.
In fact, B12 is a decent anti-inflammatory. And so occasionally what we'll do is we'll give people B12 shots just to act as an anti-inflammatory.
Yes.
It's particularly effective in childhood asthma. And we've talked about that
That's
before.
what we covered last time.
Yeah. So B12 for childhood asthma is very effective. And B12 in general, a lot of people just get an energy boost. They get the inflammation gets knocked down, and they just feel better. So as folks that'll go in and get like a vitamin shot, most of the reason why those vitamin shots work is because they got B12 in them. And the B12 just makes you feel better. So it's an easy solution to it. You don't even need to get the shot all the time. Once a month or even once every other month is enough to put enough B12 in your system to run the whole show. The anemia completely goes away. Now, in reality, I rarely see somebody with a B12 deficiency unless they can't absorb it. That's the reality. That's when in real life, who you see this B12 deficiency in are people whose stomach has quit working. It's got the lining of it gets real thin. It's called atrophic gastritis, and so the stomach basically just atrophies, and the lining gets real thin. Production of acid goes down. Production of this stuff called intrinsic factor, which is a necessary molecule to allow the absorption of B12. Without intrinsic factor, B12 just travels right through you. That's one of the reasons why people who take B12 a lot of times will hold it in their mouth and suck on it, because you can suck the B12 through your mucous membranes in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's not that effective, really. It's not enough to like fix it. It's enough to put a little B12 into your system. It's way, 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 way better to have the intrinsic factor. But once somebody loses that intrinsic factor, it's hard to get it back. It's possible, but it's hard to get it back. And a lot of times it just doesn't happen. So those people need to do B12 shots. And then again, it's an easy way to solve it. So the anemia just gets better. So
What other ways? What other types of anemia are there?
Yeah, let's talk about the genetic ones we mentioned before.
Okay.
So there's this thing. Before I tell you about the genetic ones, let me tell you this thing that has evolved in the human species. It turns out that human beings have lived for eons in places where there's malaria. And malaria is a tiny little organism that escapes from the immune system by hiding inside of red blood cells. So what it does is it enters into the red blood cells, lives there, multiplies, explodes the red blood cell. The little organisms swim around, find other red blood cells, slip in, and the immune system can't touch them. As long as they're inside these red blood cells, they're safe. And so it can be bad enough that it can literally take over your red blood cells, and they burst, and you get really sick, and you ache, and then you die. It's a miserable thing to have happen. You get malaria, and it's the organisms are very, very good about taking us over, unless when the organism gets in the red blood cell, that red blood cell goes from that nice little round donut shape into a long pointy shape. If the red blood cell changes shape and becomes pointy or spiky, then it's picked up by the spleen or the liver, and it's recycled.
Oh.
And once it's picked up, it gets torn apart. Wow, this thing is full of bugs, and the bugs get killed. So as long as those red blood cells can change shape and get picked up by the body, the organism can't survive in us. Interesting, isn't it?
Very.
And so this change of shape is called sickling. You know, a sickle is that kind of crescent moon shape.
Right.
And so what happens is a regular blood cell, once the little bug gets in there, triggers a reaction, and the red blood cell goes boink and turns, literally pops, and goes boink into a sickle shape. The sickle shape gets picked up immediately. As soon as it hits the spleen, or as soon as it hits the liver, bam, it's picked up, recycled, and the whole life cycle of those little organisms is shut down. Okay? What a great thing. That's a fabulous trait, right?
Yeah.
Except for once a cell has the tendency to sickle, you blow on it and it'll sickle. You jiggle it, it'll sickle. Anything will make it sickle.
So it just keeps on sickling and sickling.
Well, no, once it sickles once,
Yeah.
and then gets picked up and recycled. Now you just lost 27% of your blood because you did something. You got sick, or something happened, or you had a shock or whatever, right? So that's what ends up killing people who have this trait. Now, if you get one of these traits from one parent and it's missing in another parent, you have exactly the right amount of sickling so that you could fight off the malaria, but you don't sickle randomly.
Okay.
If you get a trait from your mom and your dad, you're a double sickler, and you blow on it, you're going to sickle.
Yeah.
This is called sickle cell anemia.
Oh.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And
I've
sickle
heard of
cell
that
anemia
one.
is when your red blood cells sickle. Why do they sickle? They sickle as a way of protection against stuff that's going to mess with your red blood cells, except for now they're so sensitive to it, they sickle all the time. And what they end up doing is basically dying of anemia.
Oh.
There's ways to stabilize it. There's things we're better at treating sickle cell anemia than we ever were before. There's some things to do, but it's still really hard. You got to super stabilize the red blood cells. Antioxidants tend to help. Vitamin C tends to help. There's some other stuff that helps. It's not common enough here in Fairbanks for me to see many people with sickle cell anemia to be able to treat it. It's much more common in those places that have malaria.
Sure.
Just so you all know, we don't have no malaria here.
Thankfully so. We have enough bugs.
Yeah, with no malaria.
But
Thank
no
goodness for
malaria.
that. We're malaria free.
What else?
So there's another disease called thalassemia. And thalassemia, the sickle cell anemia mostly affects Africans. The thalassemia affects people who live in the Mediterranean. But it's the same story, which is people in the Mediterranean, it's warm enough there, they also get malaria. And the thalassemia also causes the cells to change shape. They don't necessarily sickle, but they get spiky, they do weird things, and nonetheless, it's the same story. They get picked up by the spleen, they get picked up by the liver, and they get recycled. Any bugs that happen to be in them get whacked. So it turns out to be a fabulous thing. Same story again. If you get one allele, this is the gene for this thing. If you get one allele, you're golden. If you get two alleles, now you're in trouble. It's not as bad as sickle cell anemia, but it'll weaken you. You have a definite tendency towards anemia. It's more treatable. It's better. There's easier to be able to stabilize the cells and get them from doing their weird shape thing. It's an interesting thing. One of the things we do at the clinic is we look at people's blood under the microscope.
Very interesting.
You can see a lot of stuff. If you just look. And one of the things, if people have a tendency to have this sickling, it shows immediately. Because you put blood onto a glass slide, boom, it goes instantly into sickle. That's enough of a stress on the red blood cells, you can see it. But even normal cells, people who have no thalassemia, no sickle cell anemia, no tendency genetically whatsoever to have this, they'll still get their red blood cells will do this because the red blood cells are designed at a certain point in their lifespan to turn spiky. They're called echinocytes, like echinoderms, like those organisms that have spiky skin that live in the like sea urchins. Sea urchins, right, or echinoderms, right? And so your red blood cells start looking like sea urchins. It's trippy because they're nice, round, happy red blood cells, and then they get lumpy. Whoa, my red blood cells are becoming lumpy. And then from the lump, they turn into spikes. They look like that ball from the Middle Ages they put on a chain and a stick and they whack people with it. It's called a mace, right?
Yeah, a mace, exactly.
Yeah, they start looking like that. And so some of that's okay, but if we start seeing a whole bunch of that, what we know is that their people are toxic. There's too much crap, usually literally it's crap from their digestive system, that's leaked into their blood, and it's irritated their red blood cells and makes them more likely to do this spiky ball conversion, this echinocyte conversion. So anyways, it's interesting how the human body works. It's set up to go in a normal way to deal with normal kind of problems. Occasionally things get weird enough that it'll adapt, and you can see that, and then there's side effects from the adaptation. So that shows up as well. So anyways, that's another cause. The treatment for this one is to, again, I mentioned, is to stabilize the red blood cells. If you improve digestion, it tends to stabilize them. Digestive enzymes generally, because they help the digestion, and also the proteolytic enzymes tend to help stabilize them as well. Antioxidants tend to help stabilize them generally, vitamin C being cheap and easy to do. There's other things like that are helpful with this. So this is interesting, but let me go to a more common, we're in the weeds now, talking about weird stuff that you don't see very much. Let's go back into the main part of the forecast, right?
Common ground.
Yeah, and we're talking about people who get anemia, but they don't have an iron deficiency, they don't have a B12 deficiency, they don't have a genetic problem, they just have anemia for no good reason. And the reason why these people get anemia, it's called anemia of chronic illness. The reason why they get anemia is because they're tired. Now, one of the other things that goes into making blood is energy. You literally got to put energy into it. You're making cells. And so what you do is your body has to divide to make all these red blood cells. And if it doesn't have enough energy to put into it, it doesn't get done. And so you just simply come up short in red blood cells. For these people, to treat them, you need to treat them. You need to treat them and make them healthy.
Yeah.
You got to actually get them to turn. And you got to build them up, give them energy, get them to sleep well, get them to eat well, to do like that.
Yeah.
That's what you end up doing with them. If they
We're back to eat well and exercise.
Yeah, exactly. You always are. And if they turn out to have some sort of disease, you need to treat the disease as best you can. Now, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes people have diseases that are not treatable. And then what you want to do is compensate as best you can, because it's a vicious cycle. The weaker they get, the less blood they make. The best blood they make, the less oxygen they can get. The less oxygen they get, the weaker they get. And down you go. Ugly. We don't like that. Nice thing about those kind of vicious cycles, though, is once you become aware of them, you can intervene. And what you do is you build people up so they can make more blood. They make more blood. They carry more oxygen. They carry more oxygen. Now they have more energy to make more blood, and up they go. And they go back up to feeling good again. So when I find those vicious cycles, instead of feeling like, this is horrible, I go, yay! Here's something to fix.
This is fun. Well, Dr. Luper, it looks like we are out of time, but that was very interesting and enlightening. And I appreciate your time today. Thank you for tuning into the show. Hopefully you'll be with us next time. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay in touch, and have a happy new year.
Thanks, Haley.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Sensible Health Solutions. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and packed with practical tips to enhance your wellness journey. Remember, small changes can lead to big results. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content possible. Stay connected with us on social media for more health insights and updates. You can find us at Sensible Health Solutions across all social platforms. Until next time, stay sensible and stay healthy. This content is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Seek medical advice from a healthcare professional for any medical conditions.